And people just can't be in denial about that. Like, we're there. It's not we're about to become, this is, worry about, it's here. It is happening. The president of the United States is using the military to show political and social control of the capital of the United States. Hey, Jamal, good to see you for our weekly therapy session, also known as Trailblaze. All things political and personal going on. How are you doing this week? What are you tracking?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Listen, it's been, as all of these weeks are, one hell of a week. Just recently we got this notice about the president of the United States trying to fire the Federal Reserve Board member, Lisa Cook, who, by the way, is the only African-American woman to ever serve on the Federal Reserve Board. And now he wants to fire her. Ever. And so now he wants to fire her.
Not just the first African-American woman, the first Black person, period, ever.
No, it's not the first Black person, period. There have been a couple of Black guys who've been on the Fed board. She's the first African-American woman to ever be on the Fed board. And so this is kind of a big deal because, one, obviously, she deserves to be there. She's got a 14-year term that was, she was appointed by Joe Biden in 2022. So she had a long time left on her term. And the president's going after what looks like, well, first of all, he says that there's a mortgage document discrepancy. The problem is there hasn't been an investigation. There hasn't been a congressional investigation. She hasn't been referred, doesn't have a criminal complaint. It's just the president decided he looked at some documents. He doesn't like them. Therefore, he has cause to fire her, which is not the way that, not the proper way of doing business on firing.
This is fascinating about that is the reason. It's not the first time something has been brought forward by the president as a story that then gets tacked onto, this is why this person needs to get fired, right? Yeah. So even with Jerome Powell, the Fed chairman, is like, well, your cost overruns in your building. And honestly, most of the time that actually works for Trump. He's very good at this, where he'll just take this idea that may be rooted in some paperwork somewhere. Yeah. And he'll just take that idea, connect it to the person, and keep hammering that home. And that's it. It is, the process doesn't matter. The facts and any of the information no longer matters because Trump just makes this, that's the story. I think though where this gets tricky in this case in particular is because there is a separate independent legal process. It is not as simple. Because I nominated you, I therefore get to fire you, right? This is not, the Fed is not an at-will workplace, right?
Right.
The document that he's referring to was present and existed well before she came for her congressional hearing.
4 years.
Right. So it's the confirmation, like all of that. It's not like firing another cabinet member, which I'm sure this president would like it to be that easy. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes, but it's
so on that point, Nayyera, don't you think it would be worthwhile like firing cabinet members for things like leaking classified documents on
I don't know why you would do that.
Apps? Like maybe that could be a problem, but that doesn't get you fired. And I gotta say, it's a little rich. It's a little bit rich for Donald Trump, who has been convicted of so many felonies and faced civil judgments based on his business practices, for him to be trying to hold someone else accountable for what may in fact be a very small mortgage document filing discrepancy. It just seems like, that seems a little odd to me.
It's very much in line with there's very on the nose that it's a real estate document, because we all know his real estate documents and dealings were very shady, but also just very on the nose that it's him ushering in an era of dot your I's, cross your T's, all your papers need to be in order, otherwise you're out.
Yeah, right? And here's the other thing about this, right? That means they're going through everybody's documents.
Right. Well, this is also, he never disclosed his financial papers. Remember in Trump 1, that whole thing, oh my God, what are his tax returns? What are tax returns? And something standard that other presidential candidates did. He never did that. But he is now the one holding everybody else accountable for, if you're driving in DC and you didn't have your tags had expired, normally that'd be a ticket offense. Well, now you can get arrested or detained by the National Guard, right? Like that's where we're at. And he's just been very effective in pushing that onto other people.
Yeah, I saw a story that had someone was walking around or had an open alcohol container, and now they've got a federal case right? Because they were picked up by a federal agent for having an open alcohol container. I mean, this is pretty tough stuff that we're in the middle of. But here's the thing about the Fed. I don't want to throw on the Fed for a minute, because if he is successful at getting Lisa Cook off the Federal Reserve Board, and she said she's not going to go quietly into the night, she's going to fight it. She's got Abby Lowell, who's one of the biggest lawyers in the country. She's got Abby Lowell defending her. He also defended Jared and Ivanka. He's defended everybody, Bill Clinton, everybody. So she's got Abby Lowell defending her on this. So she says she's not going to go quietly. But if for some reason he's successful, the Supreme Court decides he can do this, it means he will be able to appoint the majority of Federal Reserve governors, which means he will then be able to have Jerome Powell by the neck to try to lower interest rates. And the Federal Reserve will no longer be considered an independent financial institution. And we know from history that countries that don't have independent banks, central banks, don't have great long-term financial prospects. And so much of the global economy is still rooted through the United States and through our financial system, that when people lose confidence in the American financial system, it can have ripples and repercussions we just can't predict.
So the irony of all of this is that this is probably one of the most anti-capitalist things or presidencies we're seeing. And there's two things.
Oh, for sure.
For all the capitalists out there and folks who always argue about the free market and you need to protect that and never have government involved in things like healthcare or providing services. Well, guess what? This president has said that Intel needs to give 10% of its independent corporate earnings to the government. That's 10% has to go straight to the government. So now that is official federal government control and investment and involvement in a independent company. Now you have the monetary system. Also now he's trying to get explicit political control over the monetary system. I get it. He wants to lower interest rates because then, that'll be better. People can buy houses. But guess what? Then inflation. This is why they're doing this. Like inflation will increase. With tariffs, inflation is going to increase anyway. Things will cost more. The job of the Fed Reserve is to be independent, have an economic system that kind of balances all these forces out, independent of one president's wishes or another.
Don't forget, it's got two drivers. One is stable employment, try to get employment as high as possible. The other one is try to keep prices and inflation as low as possible. So it's not just like, let's just figure out what we want to do today. They actually have constitutionally mandated role.
For all of their fancy economics and things that seem very remote, those drivers are very much about maintaining the basic health of how the economy impacts regular schmegular humans. And we are now, for all those folks who design these types of systems, like, congratulations, you now have a president who is probably engaging in more socialist economic policy than anyone else. Like, Obamacare was nothing compared to this. Obama did not go and say, hey, United Healthcare, I'm going to take 10% for the federal government.
Well, right. And don't forget about NVIDIA.
Mm-hmm.
And NVIDIA, he wants 15% of whatever they get from China. He's going to allow them to sell some chips to China, and they give him 15% to the American government. And the thing about the Intel deal is he also has the ability, and he did this with another company, he has the ability to have influence over the decision-making of the company. Yep. That is a fundamentally different thing. It's not just the government getting extra benefits or getting like payments, royalty payments. It's the government having a say over the future of an American corporation. That is a very big deal. Even when I think the United States bailed General Motors out, they still left the control of General Motors in the hands of the corporation.
Yeah, all of the bailouts for car companies and that was called an investment. It's the government bought the shares and then held on to them and sold them. Like they use the actual company structure to do that. Trump is setting up something very new and unprecedented by demanding essentially a corporate payout to the government, plus decision-making for himself. Again, there's
people we're going to find out later that the Trump boys have gotten some little taste of this. They got a taste.
Don't forget the sovereign wealth fund that he keeps talking about also, right? The idea that he wants, like the way monarchies do and other dictatorial type governments where, other people can invest in a fund that he creates. And then where does that money go? So it's just a lot of economic control that he's asking for from people who at one point were all about anti-socialism. I'm like, at
Marxism,
this point, acknowledge what he is doing, and that you have gone so far to the other end of your capitalist dream where you will still talk against labor unions and livable wage, but somehow you're okay with federal government control, corporate control. Just make it make sense. That's all.
That's right. That's right. And what we do not know is where this ends, because the president is not just looking at doing this one time here, one time there. Donald Trump is not a man of modest ambitions. Say whatever you want to say about the man. The man wants the whole hog. So he is going for every bit of this he can get. So we know there are going to be other companies where this occurs. I do not know at the end of the day, one, where this stops, and then two, how the global markets will react to this over time, because there starts to be a point where you just can't trust keeping your money in the United States because you don't know what may or may not happen to it.
Nope. The other piece that I've been tracking is, of course, living in DC, it's fascinated by how the police system here and military systems, how they're coming together. The plans to expand this around the country with a special National Guard unit. I don't think Chicago and Illinois are going to go down as easy as DC, because they actually, it's a city that has a governor and its own governance structure. Poor DC, home rule, not allowed to actually govern everything themselves. Because I can tell you, I think the mayor, if she'd just gotten the money from the federal government to begin with, would have filled in all the potholes. Like, no mayor is sitting there saying, "Oh, I don't want the money. I don't want to fill in potholes." Like, it's the number one complaint that people have about service, government service.
And by the way, and by the small way, you have a right, if you are in control of yourself, you have a right to not do things that maybe other people think that you should do, because you have other priorities. Like maybe you decide, oh, I'd rather have free pre-K for all the 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds instead of fixing some highway that we can fix next year. I don't know. You make a decision. That's what governing is. It's like having a household budget.
When you have a limited budget, you decide what your priorities are. And that's what she had to do, because she had a budget that was limited by the federal government. But the same federal government will now turn around and spend all this money to expand the roads so that National Guard vehicles can go down. I'm like, why didn't you just let them figure this out and take care of it? Anyhow, that's some of the illogic that is being used here. One of the things, I wasn't sure if you heard this, Jamal, is that, the district DC attorney, Judge Pirro, from who we used to know from Fox News, now is federal government authority. And she said that she is not going to be allowing prosecution of anybody who shows up with a rifle or armed in DC. Nobody. So it's not just the National Guard now being armed. Now it's random militia dudes can just show up and start patrolling, and it's okay. So she's completely vacated any of DC's own firearms rules. And it's a free zone that, what? Like, what?
Yeah, that's what you need more of in DC, is more guns. I saw a video. Now, it's the internet, so you got to check all these things out. I did see a video of an African-American man who claimed to be an attorney in Washington, D.C., who was stopped by 2 federal agents. One of them was identified as an FBI agent, stopped by them for carrying a weapon. Now, he said the weapon was not loaded. They didn't have the magazines. They were looking around in his possessions to try to find the magazines to go for this weapon. So the question for me is this is often the thing, right? Other people can carry weapons. Maybe these, young white kids from places that are not the place we're looking into can bring a long gun into an American city. But let me tell you this: if a bunch of black kids from Southeast Washington, D.C. started walking around with long guns and rifles, I do not know how long this law will stand.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I don't want them to challenge it that way. That's the reality, because I don't think it'll go down well for any of those young black men to do that. But this is a law that should be challenged. And we know it's not going to be equally applied. And that really it's an invitation for outside actors to come in and get involved in what should be city decisions by the people who live in the city. But again, we live in a moment, and the state of our nation right now is that people living in other states and other places feel that they can decide how cities that they don't live in should be run.
Yeah, and and there is a very peculiar part of this notion that we're going to send National Guard troops from these Republican-headed states to Washington, D.C. Many of these states are in the South, Louisiana and Mississippi, and all these states that are former Confederate states. I just seem I feel like nobody's really talking about the idea that a bunch of Southern troops are being sent to the nation's capital to keep order, which is precisely opposite of the way things went down at the end of the Civil War, right? At the end of Reconstruction, federal troops were in Southern capitals to keep order. And now we're seeing the reverse. And Trump has political control over these troops because all these governors will do whatever he says. It just something about it. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it means, but something about it smells really bad.
We all know what it means. It's pretty black and white what this is going on here, and everybody sees it. So like, okay, like sure, if cable news analysts don't want to say it, fine. Everybody understands that this is, there is a old racial dynamic that is being brought back that never really left, but is now being brought back in full force. Also, look at the cities that Trump has talked about. DC, he's talked about Baltimore, he talked about Chicago, he tried it in LA. Oh, these are all cities that are not only mixed ethnically, racially, they have black mayors. All 4 of those cities have black mayors. How convenient.
It's true. It's true. And what is the loyalty of these troops, right? I mean, you get to think, so if you've got troops from Mississippi,
I got to tell you, these guys, they do not want to be doing these jobs. They are still.
I'm thinking if you're from
now, they're on these deployments. We're like, I didn't sign up to be randomly patrolling DC.
I know. I just wonder if you're from Mississippi or Louisiana and you're some kid from, out in the, someplace, and let's say you're conservative, and now you're here in Washington, D.C., and your Republican governor orders you to defend, the president, who, by the way, did not order people to defend the Capitol when it was under assault. It just feels like loyalty troops, right? It feels like the president is bringing a bunch of troops that he may feel he has more direct political control over than the random officers or random troops who may have to call up if they were just Washington, D.C. based. This all feels like the ability for the president to have enough troops on the ground in major cities that if unrest outbreaks, he has the ability to control it in a way that maybe he wouldn't otherwise. So anyway, it's scary stuff to me. It's the possibilities of this are very frightening.
It is at its most basic level, the president of the United States using the military to flex and show control of the nation's capital. The entire world is watching that and seeing that. First, they saw a military parade. It wasn't that great, but they saw that and they understood. And so that is a signal that the United States is now sending to everybody. And people just can't be in denial about that. Like, we're there. It's not we're about to become. This is, worry about. It's here. It is happening. The president of the United States is using the military to show political and social control of the capital of the United States.
There we go. Yeah. Well, so on that upbeat note, so fascinating. But there's a lot more to be unfolded. We aren't even through year 1 of the Trump presidency. Yeah. We've got a lot more road to go. We'll see if we actually have an election next year. If we have an election, if that election is one that is at all valid and fair. I know the president's meeting with states to try to redistrict more, seats and stuff. We got a lot. There's a lot left to learn here.
Russia still runs elections. It's just not anything that normally people in the United States has recognized as free and open elections or fair elections. But they routinely run elections that reelect Putin to, his almost 30 years of power. Like that happens there. But they're technical, right? It's just it's a facade of democracy and participation.
Yeah.
Cheerful.
Okay. Cheerful.
Cheerful.
We'll do more next week. Thanks for being here on Trailblaze. We'll talk to you next week right here.